Hey, my name is Brianne Dick. I'm the co-founder of the Visionary CEO Academy. And today I want to show you the tool that we use for marketing here at the VCA. It's called the Demand Gen system, and it is by far the simplest framework that I have ever found in terms of how you can build a marketing engine that gets actual sales, not just leads, but sales on repeat without needing to build a traditional lead gen funnel, without needing a whole bunch of complexity. There's so much out there about how you should do your marketing and how you need to, have one channel that you focus all your energy in and master until you get to $1 million. And that's kind of true, but it's not that you need one channel per se. It's that you need one framework to follow, one method for getting sales that works repeatedly. And if you can get that, you can get to $1 million. And in our world, like I said, this is called the Demand Gen system. Now, we do have a worksheet to go along with this. I'm going to bring it up right now. If you want a copy of this worksheet so that you can be using it as well, if you're watching on Facebook, go ahead and comment Demand Gen below in the comments. Or if you're watching this anywhere else, there's a button on the page. You go ahead, click that button, and you'll be able to download this worksheet for yourself and go through it either with me as I'm going through this or on your own after the fact. So what is demand gen? Let's start there because it's a term that not a lot of people have heard before. Well, let's actually start by talking about what demand gen is not. So demand gen is not a funnel, right? That's the start there. It's not about a funnel. It's not about getting leads, quote unquote, and it's not about following a certain set of tactics. Because when you think about how marketing is usually taught in the online space, it's about these three things, right? It's about having the right funnel to get leads, and here are the tactics you need. But the truth is, when you think about what a funnel is, all of this funnel building talk is really telling you to go to wherever your people are and then get them to raise their hand and say, oh, I'm interested in what you have to say. I think I might be like the kind of person that you might want to talk to. And then we educate them, right? We get them behind a paywall, we get them to opt in, and then we educate them and we teach them all of the things. And then out the bottom of our funnel come sales, right? So if we think about the traditional funnel, we've got traffic comes in and sales come out the bottom. But the problems with this are a few things. Number one, and I'm just going to draw this a little more clearly. The problem with the traditional funnel view is that it assumes that you know where you can go to just start pouring leads in, right? It assumes that your people gather in easily reachable places. It assumes that you can use Facebook ad targeting to be able to find them easily. It assumes that they congregate, and it's kind of this idea of the blue ocean versus the red ocean, right? If you've heard of blue ocean strategy, the idea is you don't want to go in the red ocean where everyone else is. You want to go and create this blue ocean where every time you put your fishing rod in, you'll get a fish, right? But the truth is, for most of us, that's not the way that traffic works. We can't go and find an audience that is only our ideal people in it. And so traffic becomes a bit of a mess. And so then what funnels tell us is, okay, so you're going to go and you're going to get traffic and you're going to pour it into the top of your funnel and you're going to offer them a solution to their problem, right? Now, that's this kind of top of funnel section. And that assumes that number one, this traffic is going to just magically trust you. They've met you for all of 30 seconds in an ad or 30 minutes on a podcast. Now they're going to trust you and they're going to be eager to give up their email address. Now, I don't know about you, but for my business, people are pretty jaded. They don't just give out their email address to anyone anymore, right? They don't want to be treated as a lead if they're just kind of interested around the edges, around the periphery of what you're doing. And then what happens is in this funnel, though, is we get this traffic in, we collect email addresses, and then we assume that there's a linear path through the top of funnel, through the middle of funnel, out through the bottom of funnel, and that it's a sale. And if you actually think about this, it's kind of gross because we've all heard marketers talk about this idea of, oh, you have a leaky funnel, right? The idea that if anyone comes in the top and then they exit out at any point other than, the bottom, oh, your funnel's leaking and you should have been able to recapture those people. And what that really is assuming is that absolutely everyone who gives you an email address should be buying from you. And if they're not, then you're doing something wrong, which is another way of saying you should just sell to all the people and not actually care if you're selling to the right people. This is why the whole funnel system is broken, because it assumes that everyone who enters into your audience is a lead, right? It assumes that everyone in traffic is a lead, right? It assumes that if you nurture people long enough, then people will decide to buy. And it assumes that there is a linear path between traffic and purchase, and that if you lose anyone along the way, it's your fault and that you've done something wrong. That to me is kind of a symbolic of what's wrong with online marketing in general, is those three things. I would much rather have a mechanism that, yes, gets sales, but I want something that's actually going to be customer centric, right? I want something that is actually going to be identifying the right people and helping them without forcing them to go through this pipeline of sales messaging and grossness. I want something that's not just getting us generic leads, as in email addresses, but I want our leads to actually be what we would call sales qualified leads. In other words, people who are likely to actually buy from us. And then I don't want it to be this idea of a linear path where you start here and you end up at the end and is like, step by step, you will end up with the sale. Instead, I want something that is actually going to empower your customers to be able to become good buyers in the time that's ready for them. Because when we get that, we don't just, get better quality leads, but we actually get good demand for our products, meaning that the people who are coming in are people who actually want what we have, and they're likely to actually use it and get results from it. And this is true regardless of what tactics you put in. The truth is that funnels assume that there's a certain set of tactics. There's an opt-in tactic, there's a thank you page tactic, there's a this tactic, there's that tactic. But what we really want is to be able to find a customer-centric way of identifying the right potential buyers, and then whatever the mechanism is that's best for you and for them, that's what we want to find. And that's what the demand gen system gives us. Now, I want to be clear as I'm going through this is that you will need to get leads in a demand gen system, right? We need leads, we need prospective buyers, but the way that we think about leads in a demand gen system are different because look, we can have poor quality leads, and we can have high quality leads, right? We can have high demand and we can have low demand. And what the demand gen system does is it addresses demand and leads in a way that most other marketing systems don't. So let's think about it. If you have low demand and poor quality leads, you pretty much, don't really have a business, or you'll be out of business very, very soon, right? Poor quality leads and low demand means out of business, right? If we have high demand, but poor quality leads, then we've got all the wrong people, right? We've got all the wrong people coming through. We're spending all of our time on sales calls with people who are never going to buy, or even if they do, they're not going to get results. And it just becomes, a real problem from a time and energy and frankly, sustainability perspective. Then we have the problem where we have high quality leads, but there's simply not enough of them, right? This is the best kept secret. And this is where I see a lot of really, really good online business owners ending up, where you have high quality leads, but you have low demand because you've been focusing on lead gen, right? Which is about getting lots of leads, high quality leads, but you haven't been generating demand. What we want is to be in this sweet spot, right? We want to be in this situation where we have high demand from high quality leads. And that is what demand gen is intended to give us. Now, I want to just give credit where credit's due. Demand gen isn't the topic or a thought that I came up with or that our team came up with. Demand gen is actually something that comes out of the software world. And the reason that it works, the reason that demand gen works in the startup world, in the software world, is that it comes from a world where you assume that qualified leads are going to be mixed into the crowd and potentially hard to identify, right? It assumes that buyers don't know you, they don't know your business, they don't know your product, and as such, you need to do more work ahead of time to build trust while building demand and interest for the solution that we have. So it's about creating an ungated ecosystem. And in the software world, especially as a startup, especially as a pre-million-dollar startup in the software world, you want people to be able to hang out in your ecosystem and move backward and forward between the stages of awareness. We don't want to force people through because we want good leads that are going to become good clients that are going to stay with us for a long time. And that's why demand gen works in the software world. And it's also why demand gen works in the online business world. So what is the demand gen system? What goes into the demand gen system? Well, there's 4 different components of the demand gen system. And just like we saw above where we have, this dynamic of how are the leads, are they high quality or low quality? We also have this dynamic of demand. Is it high demand or low demand? That's what the 4 elements of the demand gen system are intended to help us suss out. So the first 2, these ones right here, generating and nurturing, those are your demand elements. These are how we're going to move from low demand to high demand. So when we're talking about generating, what are we talking about? Well, we're talking about what you could call in funnel language traffic, but really what we're talking about here is awareness. How can we build awareness that your business, your company exists in markets that don't know you, in places where people have never heard of you? And the difference here is that we're not so worried about finding the exact right person and finding a group of 100 people who are all exactly your right client. When we're talking about generating demand, we're talking about being willing to build awareness of what you do and being willing to build traffic around what you do, even if only 3 out of 100 people are potentially going to be your right people. Because once we've created this we've created this traffic, we've built and generated a little bit of awareness and demand, that's when we go to nurture. And this is where we start to think about the role of content marketing, because content marketing is really about educating people and showing them why they need what you have to offer and why they are where they are, and all of this kind of stuff that we normally do in content marketing. Its job is to not just nurture leads, but to generate and nurture demand. We want our content marketing to do the job of getting people to say, yes, I want what you have, I need what you had, so that when they become leads, which is the second part of the equation here, this is what our 3rd and 4th elements are about. When they say, you know what, I actually do need what you have to offer, they are self-identifying as ready to solve the problem that you have. They're saying, yes, I have this problem and I am looking for a solution to it. And so here, what we're really talking about is an opportunity for people to raise their hand and say, not only do I want this freebie, which is what funnels would have you say, but what we're actually wanting them to say is, yes, I want help solving this specific problem. And once people have self-identified, then we can make the invitation. We can invite people into a private conversation to discuss how you can help them solve their problem. And private here doesn't have to mean a sales call, right? It doesn't have to mean getting on a phone with prospects. It can mean a sales page. It can mean chatting in Messenger. It can be sales calls if that's what you want. But really what it is, it's about making an invitation for people who have already said, I have this problem, and using the relationship that you've already built over here in the demand gen part, using that relationship to say, hey, you raised your hand, you said you have this problem, do you want our help to solve it? It's very simple. It's it almost sounds too simple. And that's why people go and they try and make it more complicated. And to let you know what I mean by that, let's just compare this 4-element system with what a traditional funnel would look like. So again, I know I drew this earlier on, but what are the elements of a traditional funnel? Well, a traditional funnel has traffic coming in the top. It has top of funnel, it has middle of funnel, it has bottom of funnel, and then sales come out the bottom, right? This is how we're taught to think about a funnel. And at each of these stages, we're taught this is a different level of customer awareness. Therefore, we need different kinds of content. My top of funnel content has to be really problem focused. My middle of funnel content has to be this kind of content. My bottom of funnel content has to be this kind of content. And what ends up happening is, just look at this proportionately. How much is happening below the opt-in wall? How much content, how much material, how much of your good stuff is being reserved for people who are below the opt-in line? And some people actually would put the opt-in line up here, right? You'd say traffic comes first. And as soon as you get traffic, you need to get their email address, right? But look at how much time and energy you're putting into creating material for people who, how many people are ever going to see it? You're putting in all this time and energy into middle of funnel content, into bottom of funnel content. But is that really the best way to, grow your business if you're everyone's best kept secret, right? If you're everyone's best kept secret, then hiding all your best stuff behind an opt-in wall isn't going to help solve that problem. And if you find that it's hard to get the right people on your list, this is why, because you're trying to attract and generate demand with fluffy content that doesn't actually solve what they want. You're keeping all of the good stuff behind the wall. No one wants that. And the way that demand gen works is it takes this opt-in line, it takes this hand raiser line, and it moves it down to the bottom here, right? It says, I'm going to spend time and energy. If I'm going to spend time and energy, I'm going to make it available to as many people as possible. I'm going to generate demand in public. I'm going to nurture that demand in public. And then, I'm going to make these invitations. I'm going to invite people to self-identify. I'm going to let them raise their hand and say, after they know all of this stuff about what we do, why we can help, how this can help them, how it's relevant to their situation. Once they know all of that, then we can get them to raise their hand and say, do you want help with that? And they'll raise their hand, they'll self-identify, and then we have very little time and energy that we need to spend actually going to get the sale, right? And what this means is that you have way fewer leads, right? Okay, let's just be transparent about that. Because if this is what you consider a lead, is anyone who's raised their hand for your freebie, which is about like the 5 things you need to have in order to blah, 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 which is, I don't know, is that working for you? It never worked for me. You look at how many leads you're getting, but look at how many of them are actually qualified. Compare that with a demand gen method. And what we're saying is, we have fewer leads. These are the only people that we consider leads, but these people are actually qualified. They're actually likely to buy. And that means that proportionately, we're able to invest our time and energy into people who are wanting what we have in a much more compelling way. And so, look, if you want sales and not just leads, I know which approach I would rather have, right? Instead of building this complicated funnel and having to worry about which content goes where, and is it top of funnel content, middle of funnel content, bottom of blah, 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 I would much rather simplify things. And I would much rather focus on generating demand, right? Let's go ahead and generate that demand, nurture that demand. Let's do all of that up here, generate and nurture in public. And then when folks are ready to buy, then they can move into the lead phase and we can go ahead and we can help them with that. So really, this is just so much simpler, right? And it's a way of taking all of the marketing activities you're already doing. And if you look at them through this lens and you say, is this intended to generate demand? Is this intended to nurture demand? Or is this lead focused? It can much more easily help you know, are you spending your time and energy on the things that are going to make sales? So, I mean, hey, if you want to build a complicated funnel, that's fine. But if you want to be cutting out all the wasted time and effort that comes from nurturing leads who are never actually going to buy and nurturing leads who aren't actually leads, then this demand gen system is by far going to be the more successful way to go. So again, if you want the worksheet for this, you can comment demand gen below and we'll hook you up with it. In the worksheet, not only is there everything I showed you here, but there's also a place for you to map out how is your demand gen working? What are you doing in each of these areas and all of that sort of thing. So again, you're watching on Facebook, you can comment demand gen. If you are watching this anywhere else, there's a link below. You can click the link. It'll get you to this worksheet. You can map out your demand gen system. You can figure out where you're spending your time and energy, and you can be getting sales, not just leads, much more quickly and without needing a complicated funnel.